Next up, we have item number 19, which is House Bill 129 by Representative Renaud. Do we have a motion and a second?
Motion.
There are no amendments filed, so Representative, you're recognized to explain your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. HB 129, known as the Defend the Guard Act, is an effort to ensure that the Tennessee National Guard remains where it's most needed, and that's here in Tennessee. This bill would prohibit the Tennessee National Guard from being released from state duty into federal active duty combat unless the United States Congress has passed an official declaration of war or has taken an official action pursuant to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 15 of the United States Constitution. The Guard's mission is clear, and that is to be well-trained, equipped, and responsive to our governor's call in time of emergency. When Hurricane Helene devastated our state, the next day over 700 of our troops were sent to Kuwait. It begs the question to many, why weren't more guardsmen sent to eastern Tennessee than the 500 or so that went there? I believe it's because Washington continues to entangle our National Guard into undeclared wars that are endless. HB 129 simply works to align Tennessee with the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 8 is unambiguous, saying that Congress, not the President, holds the power to declare war. Yet for decades, our troops have been sent into combat without a vote, without accountability, and without clear objectives. The cost is broken families, PTSD, and Tennesseans paying for veteran care when they come home after the wars take their toll on them. I know some are concerned that this bill will risk federal funding, but I don't believe that that is true because the Guard funding comes under Title 32, not the combat orders of Title 10. There are 6 other states who have introduced this bill that had zero fiscal impact. We all know that fiscal notes can often kill a bill on the note alone. One of our own congressional delegates sits on the Defense Appropriations Committee. There is no way he will let Tennessee lose one dime, and I have confirmed that with his office. The true cost is borne by our soldiers and their families who are sent to war with no end in sight. Some fear that the Department of Defense will retaliate, restructuring our Guard. But let's be clear, Congress controls the purse strings, not the Department of Defense. And we're undefeated in wars that have actually been declared. It begs the question, why have there not been any formal declaration of wars in over 80 years? As President Eisenhower said, the military-industrial complex profits from perpetual conflict. Our Guard members cannot speak out because they would risk their careers, but I have heard from them, and they are watching. They took an oath to defend the Constitution, and so did we. If a war is worth fighting for, I'm simply saying that it's worth Congress voting for. A yes on HB 129 will tell Washington that Tennessee's sons and daughters will stay home to protect our people unless Congress follows the law of the land. I stand ready for questions.
Before we take any questions from our members, we have had requests for testimony on this legislation. So without objection, we're going to go out of session to hear from those individuals. So we're out of session. We have 3 individuals that will be speaking with us first. And the first person is Samantha Zakowski. And please state your name and who you're with for the record, and you will have 3 minutes for your testimony. And welcome.
Thank you, Chair Lady Rudder, and thank you to the committee for hearing my testimony. Before I begin, would it be out of line to hand out those fiscal analyses from different states?
That's not allowed.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
thank you. Again, thank you for hearing my testimony. I'm Samantha. I'm a mother, and I'm a disaster relief volunteer and also a proud citizen of the state of Tennessee. 2 years ago, when a string of tornadoes tore through Clarksville, our Tennessee National Guard was in Kuwait instead. Last fall, when Hurricane Helene decimated eastern Tennessee and greater Appalachia, There were some national troops available here, and they performed very heroically. But within 48 to 72 hours earlier, nearly 800 Guardsmen troops were deployed overseas with their equipment and choppers that make up such a large piece of that precious federal funding we constantly hear as the excuse for why some haven't co-sponsored yet. Tennessee was left vulnerable, and many of our strongest, most capable citizens were not able to help their neighbors in their time of need, and that is actually part of their job description. A job description tied to the branch of the military with the motto, always ready, always there. There doesn't mean Syria or Afghanistan, but there meaning our own backyards. Don White has told us that $400 million in federal funding wasn't worth the risk in not being able to send our National Guard away, whether the feds feel like it or not. Did the old brass lobbying against this bill, illegally mind you, I don't know if you've heard of the Hatch Act, did they tell you that that funding is mostly in equipment that is sent away with the Guardsmen when they deploy? Did they tell you that they've been quoted of bragging that it only takes a helicopter ride and blasting Fortunate Son like someone would bribe an 8-year-old to clean their room? We are not their ball washing station for their buddies at Lockheed Martin. You say goodbye to those cool choppers if this bill doesn't pass because they keep shipping them off to these unjust battles. Oh, and did they also tell you that the other states have those receipts proving the loss of funding they threaten? And it doesn't exist. There's been several states with analyses proving that. We heard moments ago from Rep. Reedy that he's seeking state guard funding. Maybe we could be more conservative and have our National Guard here when they should be. This is a simple bill. There's no tricks. It doesn't render our troops undeployable, just unconstitutionally undeployable. I implore you to live up to most of your campaign websites claiming you're conservative and bring your troops home without a legally declared war so that the people who voted for you don't come knocking and asking for a refund. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? We don't. And thank you for your testimony. Next up, we have Michael Stevens. Please. Oh, Mitchell. Mitchell Stevens, I'm sorry, Mitchell. My husband's named Michael. I must be thinking about him this morning. Please come up and state your name and who you're with for the record, and you also will have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Mitchell Stevens. I represent myself.
Go right ahead with your testimony.
Good morning. I am Mitchell Stevens. I've preached for the Oak Avenue Church of Christ in Dixon, Tennessee since 2012, and I'm here to support Defend the Guard. The Bible reveals God's wisdom for civil order. When God governed his people on his land, law enforcement and warfare were handled carefully, local, decentralized, limited. Laws were enforced by kinsmen acting as avengers of blood. Crimes were quickly brought to justice in local gates or nearby cities of refuge. King David's greatest policy failure was measuring the security of his land by its military strength, bringing judgment on his capital. When military power was abused, God held his people accountable. Our founding fathers built on this wisdom, crafting a constitution with careful checks on power. Defend the Guard reasserts that restraint. Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 5, charges you as lawmakers and God's servants to commend good and punish evil, wielding the sword of force for that purpose, and not in vain. In vain isn't just failing to act, it's misusing the sword God entrusts to you. Too often, we fixate on the sword itself, on the tool, over the solemn task. If we're being offered a dazzling, jewel-encrusted sword to ignore the National Guard's limited duties, that weapon is no longer a defender's instrument, but a mercenary's wage, paid for by the lives of the ones sent to wield it. When oaths are ignored and blood is shed to keep money flowing, that is an abomination before God. Tennesseans enlist to defend, only to be swept into vague foreign missions, their spirits burdened by moral fog and conflicting justifications. I've talked to guardsmen in my church. I see the toll deployment has taken on a young wife left at home, working and pregnant, suffering ever more frequent panic attacks from the vast separation. They know in their hearts what they're deployed to do is not guarding Tennessee. It's time to defend our guard from such abuse. Daniel Webster advised it will be the solemn duty of the state governments to protect their own authority over their own militia and to interpose between their citizens and arbitrary power by the federal government. Representatives, thank you for your service. Wield the sword with care. Keep it closer to home. I am here as a Christian and concerned citizen to remind you that you are under much higher scrutiny than the eyes of the public. There will be a day when you will answer to God for every careless word, every reckless law, and every blood-stained penny. You are in my prayers.
Thank you for your testimony. Do we have any questions from our members? If not, thank you. That's not allowed, but you can send them to our offices, just to our emails. That'll be great. Thank you. Next, we have Brandon Eskew. Good morning, Brandon. Please come up and state your name and who you're with for the record, and you will also have 3 minutes for testimony.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, for the opportunity to speak today. I did bring a handout, if I'm allowed to.
You need to state your name and who you're with for the record.
Major Retired Brandon Askew. I'm with Defend the Guard.
Thank you for that. And we don't allow any handouts, but you can send them to our offices.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank
You
you
for the opportunity to speak again. My name is Major Retired Brandon Askew. I'm a combat veteran from both Iraq and Afghanistan, earning Bronze Stars in both conflicts, with additional tours in Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Egypt. I've served 4 years in the Army National Guard, 11 years on active duty, and 7 in the Army Reserves. I'm here to testify to the absolute horrors our government inflicts on the men and women who serve in the Guard, while we continue endless deployments to conflicts our Congress didn't even bother to vote on. My twin brother served 13 years in the Georgia Army National Guard. It was a meat grinder. He deployed 30 months to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kosovo. Between deployments, my brother struggled to find employment due to inconsistency. His relationship suffered. The Guard leadership would dangle carrots to get him on the next deployment, and he was regularly threatened with a stick if he didn't comply. The handout that I've brought that I will send to you later is an anonymous letter written by a career Air National Guardsman in Georgia. The man is unable to share his names. It may cost him his career. There are many more like him. The National Guard composed 45% of the occupational force during the height of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan and incurred 18% of the casualties. My old Guard company lost 5 men in Iraq, which is as many as my active company lost in Iraq. These men and women lived up to their commitment. Will you? Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth says he will. All I want is accountability. Congress needs to put their name on the line before we put boots on the ground. I'm not saying the National Guard shouldn't serve in combat. I'm just asking that if we do send the Guard to combat, Congress should vote on it first. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you for your support.
Thank you for coming here today. We do have a question. Representative Warner?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, sir, for being here. And most of all, thank you for your service to this great country. I'm a firm believer that this country does not do enough for our veterans. So thank you greatly. We greatly appreciate you. One quick question. Can you elaborate on the difference between Title 10 and Title 32? Hang on.
I'm sorry, I have to recognize you first, and you are recognized.
Title 32 governs the National Guard when under state control but funded by the federal government. It covers activities such as training, readiness, record keeping, and compliance with federal standards while the governor retains command authority. States must adhere to Title 32 requirements to maintain eligibility for federal funds. Title 10 governs the National Guard when mobilized into federal service, effectively transitioning onto the regular Army or Air Force under the President's command. Deployments under Title 10 remove the National Guard from state control and are tied to federal decisions such as overseas combat operations.
Representative Warner?
Thank you again, Madam Chair. So it's my understanding you have no problem with the National Guard going to war. You just want Congress to declare war first.
You're recognized.
Absolutely the case, sir.
Any more questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, and also thank you for your service to our country. Next, we're going to hear from Major General Warner Ross with the Tennessee National Guard. Please come up, state your name, and who you're with for the record. And you will have 3 minutes for your testimony.
Chairlady Rudder, members of the committee, I'm Major General Warner Ross, the Adjutant General of Tennessee Military Department. And before I start my testimony, I want to thank everybody. We're all passionate about the same thing here. It's our soldiers and airmen. And there's several in this room that's been down that road before that was described by the speaker before me, and we honor and respect them. So it's an honor to get to speak to you on behalf of 13,000 of our members who serve you as citizens in this great volunteer state. I thank you for the support. You voted on bills today that impact our soldiers and airmen. From the Over the Mountain Men to the General Jackson Volunteers, Davy Crockett at the Alamo, and the 30,000 that served at the Mexican War, our members continued the volunteer legacy. They're ready for the toughest missions, defending our nation at the southwest border, responding to natural disasters like Hurricane Helene, or deploying overseas. Something that's been left out is today's National Guard is a dual mission force, federal and state. We pledge an oath to both of those constitutions. Over 95% of our training and equipment and budget comes from the federal funding. Today's National Guard represents 42% of the Army combat power available to the Department of Defense. There was a time when we were a strategic reserve. We're an operational reserve now. However well-intended this legislation may be, passage will do unintended harm to our military readiness, our state's role in national security, and our ability to respond to those domestic emergencies that we know we just faced as early as last evening and back in the fall. If passed, this will be viewed as an unwillingness by Tennessee to allow access to resources, manpower, and force structure provided by those federal funds. Federal decision makers will reallocate critical funds and equipment to other states, as the Tennessee National Guard cannot be counted on to contribute. We're a team built on performance, lethality, and a record of readiness and meritocracy. We have a lion's share in this state of what the National Guard has to offer compared to the other 54. In short, this legislation isolates the Tennessee National Guard and puts our states and citizens at significant disadvantage compared to those states who do not have this legislation. I'll give you an example real quick before we close out. We're in competition with other states for new capabilities such as the KC-46. The U.S. Air Force's newest air refueler. We're one of 7 states in the final selection round, and our application is backed up by unmatched performance. There is no current recapitalization plan for refuelers, and only one of those 7 states will be selected. This legislation will all but remove our team from that list of top contenders, jeopardizing the future of the 134th Air Refueling Wing at McGee-Tyson in Knoxville. There's several more examples, but we just don't have time to go into those. If passed, the critical capabilities such as the 278th Armored Cavalry Regiment or 194th Engineers, 1st and 230th Rotary Wing assets that we used just yesterday to put out fires would be in jeopardy.
Go ahead and finish your thought, but your time is up.
Okay. Our members understand their responsibilities and missions. Their performance is deep-rooted in accomplishments and a legacy of the volunteers. I ask that we focus on ensuring that our force is well-equipped and funding, always remaining ready now to serve whenever we're called upon. That's what we sign up to do. That's how we can best serve our neighbors.
Thank you for your testimony. I think we do have some questions. First up, we have Representative Warner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And sir, again, thank you for your great service to this country, and all the gentlemen sitting here in the audience. Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you.
You're recognized.
A couple. Oh, okay. Madam Chair, I have a couple questions. Would it be okay if I go back and forth with him? Or do I need to come to you every time? More than happy to, madam. More than happy to. First question, have you personally discussed HB 129 with the National Guard Bureau or the Chief of the National Guard Bureau?
You're recognized.
Yes, sir. We have had a statement and some conversations about that. All 54 adjutant generals oppose this. The Chief of the National Guard Bureau has not issued a statement on this.
You're recognized.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. What were the name, titles, and ranks of the officials that you spoke to who informed you that they would support the National Guard response to HB 129.
You're recognized.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Chair Lady. I have letters from our National Guard Association of Tennessee, our Enlisted Association of Tennessee, and the National Guard Association of the United States, which has all 54 adjutant generals, as well as the Adjutant Generals Association. So that's hundreds of military officials and groups that oppose this bill.
You're
And
recognized.
I'll welcome to send those to you, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and if you would, please, that'd be great. And one quick last question I got, and then I'll be done, Madam Chair. Since Secretary Pete Hegseth's nomination to head the Pentagon, has your office contacted the Department of Defense to ascertain his current views on Defend the Guard?
You're recognized. You're recognized.
Couple questions. First one, why not?
You're recognized.
No, sir. He's giving guidance to us. They haven't focused on this. We've run that back up our chain. My office doesn't talk directly to the OSD, but we talk through NAUGUS and National Guard Bureau. We've asked the questions. We haven't gotten a response.
You're recognized.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Wouldn't his support for this bill be a major factor in your decision to testify today?
You're recognized.
Yes, sir. It would.
And a couple more follow-ups.
You're recognized.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Would you agree that having failed to provide any contradictory statements, that we must rely on the Secretary's public statement from last year and assume the likelihood he's in supportive of House Bill 129?
You're recognized.
I couldn't assume that. He was in a different role at that point, and in the role he now has, the National Guard represents 42% of his combat power, but I cannot speak for the Secretary.
You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And sir, again, thank you from the bottom of my heart for your service.
We do have Chairman Eldridge on their list to ask some questions.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and to everyone sitting out there that's wore a uniform, you have nothing but my respect, no matter which side of this issue you're coming from. And we've heard about the funding, that it's congressionally mandated in T10 and T32. And then we've heard from you about the negative impact that it could have. Can you delve into that just a little bit more? And also, this legislation, how is it going to affect the individual members? What could possibly happen there with those members and their role?
You're recognized.
Yes, sir. To your point number one, what other effects this has? Absolutely, Congress is mandated to fund us. I concur with all those statements. When we say us, that's the National Guard, not the Tennessee National Guard. So we compete for those resources against other states. The DOD will meet their obligations that Congress puts on them, but it doesn't have to be this state. Those resources can be moved and will be allocated. Have been allocated. That's an ongoing thing that we face every year as states compete against one another for resources. So yes, Congress mandates, DOD will fund, but DOD will also reallocate, and there's no mandate for them to do specific things to the Tennessee National Guard. We have a lion's share. We have so much uniqueness here, different than our other states. This puts that at risk. To answer the second question there, for the individual guardsmen, our soldiers and specifically our airmen in this state are very unique. We follow Title 10 missions daily. When that's at risk, when this KC-46, if this legislation is passed, DOD will view that as an unwillingness for us to use those resources. Those people will simply go somewhere else. They will seek other employment in other states nearby for a similar job. If we in fact were to lose not just the 134th, but the 118th here in Nashville, and also the 134th down in Memphis. Those units are flying Title 10 missions every day. We're putting that at risk.
Do you have any more questions, Representative Eldridge? Okay, go ahead.
You know, we've had this bill up here in front of us for 30 minutes. There's a lot of passion on both sides, and I think there's a whole lot at stake for our guard, our members, and everything. And I don't think 30 minutes is a justification to sit here and take a vote on this. So, Madam Chair, I would make, pardon, I'm sorry.
We're still out of session.
All right, we'll wait till you go back
We'll go back into session. Do we have any more questions for our
Thank you, Chairman.
guest? Seeing none, I want to thank you for your testimony here today, and I want to thank you for all of you gentlemen sitting in the audience. If there's any ladies out there, I may be a little blind and can't see you, but we do respect you and thank you for your service to this country. Thank you for your testimony today. Okay, we'll go back into session. Now I want to recognize Chairman Eldridge. You're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Again, you know, we've talked about this bill for 30 minutes. We've heard from both sides that's come to the office, the emails that we're getting and everything. I know there's a lot of passion here for this. And I think it does need to be looked at very seriously, just to make sure that we're doing the right thing for the right reason. The impact that we'd have on the state and on the soldiers, I don't take that lightly. I really don't. So, Madam Chair, I would make a motion that this bill go to a true summer study.
Objection.
Do we have a second?
Objection.
You have a second? We have a motion and a second. Okay, we do have an objection, and so we're going to vote on the objection. And just okay, we're going to get it in the proper order. First, we're going to vote on the original motion, which was the motion to put this legislation in summer study. We'll vote on that first, and then we'll address the objection. If we vote to send it to summer study. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll? Yes, Representative Warner.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What actually are we voting on now? I've gotten confused.
We are actually voting on Representative Eldridge's motion to send this legislation to summer study.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome. Proceed, Madam Chair. Clerk.
Burkhart. Burkhart votes aye. Eldridge. Eldridge votes aye. McCalman. McCalman votes aye. Salinas. Salinas votes no. Warner. Warner votes no. Chair Lady Rudder. Chair Lady Rudder votes aye. Madam Chair, you have 4 ayes and 2 noes.
This bill goes to summer study. Excuse me, I would like to say to the sponsor that I concur with Representative Eldridge that this is definitely an important issue that we actually do need to study. And I would be speaking with you, and we will talk about a true summer study and work through that. So I just want you to know that I do believe that this is too much passion on each side of this discussion, and we need to have another discussion and give this legislation that it was more conversation. So just wanted you to know that.